Now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We attach great importance to the regular meetings of the chairs of the three Security Council committees with mandates in counterterrorism. We share the positive assessments that you gave in your statement of cooperation of these three subsidiary organs, including when it comes to the exchange of information, preparing analytical documents, and organizing joint meetings and monitoring missions. The specialized structures of the Council face a complex challenge of adapting to the rapidly changing conditions on the counterterrorism front. The experts of subsidiary organs agree that ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and affiliated organizations are now trying to expand their presence into states that previously were fortunate in security terms. At the same time, accurately determining where the next flare-up of terror will be is extremely complicated. In these conditions, the Counterterrorism Committee must pour all of its efforts into monitoring the implementation of the relevant Security Council resolutions in all key regions. We call upon states that are on the current list of the committee's assessment visits to take a constructive approach to agreeing on such visits with the CTC leadership and its executive directorate. We note the efforts of CTED to analyze new trends in the sphere of counterterrorism. We believe it necessary to continue studying the problem of the interaction between terrorist organizations and international crime. By exploiting the potential of criminal groups, terrorists are able to substantially expand their spoiler capacity on a transnational scale. In this connection, we believe that the efforts of the Peruvian chairmanship to work on this subject in the committee are extremely necessary. Traditionally, in the CTC, we highlight the need to pay close attention to contemporary digital technologies, first and foremost to the problem of their illicit use by terrorists for the radicalization and recruitment of new supporters. The basis of this work must continue to be Security Council Resolutions 1624 and 2354. We call upon all states to thoroughly study the new Security Council requirements that are contained in Resolution 2462 on combating all sorts of support for terrorists. In particular, the Council, acting under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, called on all states to criminalize the full spectrum of criminal acts related to the illicit trafficking of small arms and light weapons. Verifying national legislation and checking law enforcement practice in this area now falls within the mandate of the CTC. Against this backdrop, once again, we would like to caution colleagues on the committee and the experts from Executive Directorate against paying too much attention to the secondary elements of the CTC's mandate. Attempts to fill out its agenda with human rights matters and replace the job of counterterrorism with the famous idea of preventing violent extremism distract states from implementing their primary obligations in this area. And I would like to take this opportunity to, in particular, thank and congratulate the Executive Director of CTED, Ms. Connings, for her contribution to strengthening the committee's contribution with specialized organizations. We welcome the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between the CTED and the regional anti-terrorism structure of the SCO, and we stand ready to provide support for its implementation where necessary. Mr. President, we believe that the effective implementation of Security Council resolutions on the counterterrorism sanctions regime applying to ISIL and Al-Qaeda is fundamentally important. We note the work of the 1267, 1989, 2253 Committee, which has proven itself to be one of the most effective of the Council's counterterrorism mechanisms. Given the growing presence of ISIL in Afghanistan and the possibility of fighters spreading further into the states of Central Asia, a priority is the extension of the counter-terrorism sanctions regime of the Security Council to persons and organizations that are linked to the Afghan wing of ISIL. Because it is these groups, in spite of the losses that they may have suffered in the north, that continue to be one of the key factors destabilizing the situation in the country. ISIL's activity in Afghanistan is also being driven by foreign terrorist fighters that have received fighting experience in Syria and Iraq. The high number of terrorist attacks involving suicide bombers indicates that the group does have human resources. In this connection, we underscore the need to continue to focus on FTFs, including when it comes to adding to the counter-terrorism sanctions lists. We support the effective work of the monitoring team, whose reports are an important aid for the work of the committee. We call upon member states to interact closely with the experts, and at the same time, we trust that the monitoring team's reports will be highly objective and rely only on verified sources of information. An equally important factor in this work is, in our view, the monitoring team's country visits, and we expect that the focus will be placed on visits to countries that are facing terrorist phenomena head-on. Mr. President, Security Council Resolution 1540 is a key, universal, legally binding document in the sphere of WMD non-proliferation, which requires all countries to take effective measures to prevent WMDs and any related materials, as well as means of delivery, falling into the hands of non-state actors. Combating the proliferation of WMDs is one of Russia's military and political priorities. As on any other difficult question, here what is needed are joint coordinated efforts of absolutely all states. What we want is to find common positions with our partners in order to make rapid headway on the non-proliferation agenda, all the more so because the problems in this area are continuing to get worse, unfortunately. In general, we are satisfied with progress in implementing the resolution and the fact that the international community has recognized its importance. We highly appreciate the efforts of the 1540 Committee under the chairmanship of Indonesia and the group of experts of that subsidiary organ. We note the organization of courses for national focal points, the conducting of country visits in order to come up with voluntary national plans of action, the provision of assistance to those countries that need it, maintaining contacts with specialized international, regional, and sub-regional organizations, and so on. However, a lot still needs to be done in order to achieve the core objective, that is to say, the implementation of the resolution by all countries in full. In the light of the continued activity in the Middle East region of ISIL and other terrorist groups that are able to produce chemical weapons and are actively using them, the importance of collective work to prevent the horrific phenomenon of chemical terrorism is only growing. At the same time, we need to act quickly, in particular since, as the situation in Syria returns to normal, terrorists, including those that have acquired practical experience in the sphere of chemical weapons, are going to try to flee to third countries. In this connection, we recall the Russian Federation's initiative to draft and adopt a convention on the suppression of acts of chemical and biological terrorism. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation